Hey everybody, it's my 40-gallon Waterfall tank, and I thought we could take a little impromptu trip around the world, give everybody a little bit of a look at my tanks as is. It's getting a little late in the evening. I'm just getting in here and probably not going to have time to get much done tonight. So today's video, as I said, is going to be a little impromptu trip around the world. We'll just have a look at all the tanks, see what's going on, and go from there. My Waterfall tank here is looking really good. The plants are growing in fantastic. I've talked about this recently. The creeping Jenny that I got from out at the reservoir is growing in fantastic. It's completely growing up through on my fern there. You can see how well the bird's nest fern is doing. All the other plants are doing well. I do need to get in and do something with the filter, or the pump rather. It's a new pump. It pumps a lot of water, but I don't have any kind of filtration set up on it yet. It's just an open face pump, and I know the tank's a little grungy right now, but if you look in there, you can kind of make out the front of the pump, which is this right here, and you can see how it's got all that stuff stuck all over it, dead leaves and little bits of fish food and all kind of debris. So definitely need to get a filter on that. It's already starting to slow down the flow of water just because the intake is getting clogged up. Of course, I need to do a water change. I need to get the glass wiped down, probably get in there and start working on some duckweed. As usual, not a lot going on here in my foot tank. It's still got plenty of water in it. Not long ago, I overflowed my Waterfall tank while I was topping it off, and this tank actually caught a considerable amount of the overflow water, so I was able to actually top that tank off too, inadvertently. So that's about all that's going on in the Waterfall. Let's go ahead and get the lights turned out here so we don't get a huge amount of glare on the rest of my tanks. And we're actually going to take a little bit of a detour. We normally would go straight to my 29 miscellaneous, but right now, while it's out and I can see it, we're going to have a quick look over here at one of my chocolate zebra plecos. We don't get to see these very often. They're getting pretty fat and chunky too. Now that's not a true zebra. That is a chocolate zebra. And I do not remember the L number on these. It's been so long since I got them. But that is definitely a chocolate zebra pleco. I got them from a breeder who was getting out of the business. He sold me 4 of them. And a tank. The tank is my 40-gallon native tank now. And 1 out of the 4 died after about a week after I got it, but I've had 3 of them in this tank ever since. And they're all doing pretty well. So, well, we've started on this tank. We can do a reverse around the world today. We'll go the other direction. Tanapoma, looking good. Just shot a video of him last night. This tank probably needs a little bit of maintenance, but I just got in here and did a lot of maintenance the other day. I did a big water change, got the glass wiped down, changed out the filter, and I did a lot of gardening. I removed a lot of plants and stuff from the tank. It's my snakeskin gourami. This is actually one of the best looking snakeskin gouramis I've seen. I was looking at him the other day, and so many of them have such faint markings, especially as they start to get a little bit bigger, and you lose that sort of snakeskin marking down their side. But this one never did. It's still really distinguishable and noticeable down the side of it. So really, really happy with the way that snakeskin turned out. But other than that, not really a lot to talk about in here. Again, a little bit of basic maintenance is going to be due again soon. Little normal water change, wipe the glass down, that sort of thing. Otherwise, everything is going okay in here. If you missed my water change video, I did point out that during that water change and for several days prior to it, I have not seen my little skinny loach that was in here. So I think that has finally passed on, and we no longer have that little skinny loach in this tank. And it's absolutely no doubt at this point that my larger loach is also starting to get skinny. So whatever afflicted my other 2 loaches and slowly withered them away is now working on my final clown loach that I have in this tank. So again, I don't know what to make of that. I've tried various medications. I've tried everything that I can think of that's recommended for that type of disease with these loaches, and I've never had any luck with it. They've all just eventually withered away until they died. 20-gallon angelfish tank here. Skipped over this one. Not a lot going on in here. It does need some maintenance. The glass needs to be wiped down. That's not really that big of a deal. When I put these really bright floodlights on them, you tend to get a lot of algae growing, and that's all that is, just a bunch of algae on the front glass. As far as the tank itself goes, this tank does collect a lot of mulm and detritus and stuff on the bottom, and I got in there not too long ago and cleaned most of it out, so you can see it's starting to build up again, but not too bad. So I think a regular gravel vac or gentle gravel vac, get the glass wiped down, you know, and then do a basic water change, and I'll be fine. You can see I'm not even really getting any backflow on the filter yet, so I'm not even really, it hasn't even been long enough that the filter is even clogged. So again, it's just the glass has a lot of algae growing on it, making it look like it's a very neglected tank, but it's not actually. But otherwise, nothing really going on in there. Again, not a lot going on anywhere really in the fish room this week. I have been sort of focusing on this tank, because this tank is my pride and joy at the moment. I'm really enjoying it. It looks like we need to get in there and get the water flowing a little more. This is just here to keep the splashing from going up against the back wall. If you can kind of make it out in the back, I've got my old filter set up from my other tank. It is an old, wow, that is really clogged in there. Watch how much water we start getting. So it's an old hydrogen peroxide bottle, and I cut the bottom and the top off, stuck it over the end of the pump, and then I just basically jam a wad of this in there, and that gives me my filter material. So right now, I got a bucket on the floor over there. I didn't just throw that on the floor. So now we got some more significant water flow, and I will need to get in there and put a new piece of filter in after this video is over. Tank looks fantastic. The crayfish are really happy. Twice now I have seen the sloughed shells of crayfish, a large one and a small one. We can see 2 crayfish at the moment. Got a little one going right over here, and we got another one right here somewhere. There he goes. And yesterday I actually saw 4 crayfish all at the same time. There's one of the slightly larger ones right here. So I saw 4 crayfish all at the same time. There's another one sitting right there underneath of that stick, if you can see him. So I put 5 in here originally, and 3 of them were fairly small, but all about the same size, somewhere in that neighborhood. And then 2 of them were fairly significant, but likewise were both around the same size. So I don't know if I could tell them apart just by seeing them. So in order to tell that all 5 of them are still in there, I kind of need to see all 5 of them at once. And I saw 4 of them yesterday, so I know at least 4 of them are still alive. And I don't have any reason to believe that there's, you know, one missing, unless that little one, when it sloughed, might have gotten eaten afterwards when it was a soft shell. So other than that, not a lot going on in here. The tank's still settling in. I have been kind of keeping an eye on the pH and the ammonia and whatnot, just to make sure everything turns over okay. And so far so good. I'm not seeing any kind of ammonia spikes. I'm not seeing any nitrites building up or anything like that. So I think this tank is fairly well established already. Don't know if it's fully stocked yet. Haven't decided if I'm going to try to catch any more minnows or anything like that and put them in there. But for now, it's got plenty of fish, and the crayfish are really what I spend my time looking at. The fish are kind of mobile decorations, and they dress the tank up and make it look pretty and everything. But the crayfish crawling around in there are what I really focus my time on when I'm watching this tank. They're really fascinating little creatures. I always recommend crayfish, again, if you've got the appropriate tank to set them up in. So sorry about all the noise. It is that fan right there. I keep it blowing in here just to keep the air moving. Otherwise it gets really humid and stuffy. But unfortunately it makes for noisy videos when I get down to this end of the room too. My 125 gallon New World tank is in need of some work. This is probably going to be what I work on tonight after I'm done this video. at the very least, I need to do a bit of a water change. I could just top it off, but if I'm going to go throwing the hose in there anyway just to add some water, I may as well spend 10 minutes draining some water first and then top it all the way back off, and that'll count as a water change. Not going to mess with the filter tonight, but I am going to get in there and do at least a basic water change, reduce some of those tannins a little bit. You can see how tea-stained the water is. You can see how close to dinner time we're getting. All the fish are very, very much ready to be eating dinner. Looks like this minnow right here. Well, I'm not even going to try to point out which one it is, but one of those minnows looks like it has a red lump on its side, and it doesn't look right. So I'll have to keep my eye on that. The creek chubs in this tank are finally getting big enough that they could possibly start eating these minnows, or maybe attempting to, and maybe that's what that red mark on the side of that minnow is actually an injury from a creek chub taking a nip at it. I don't know. At some point we are going to get in here and remove that piece of wood. I am going to do that on video, and that's kind of one of the reasons we haven't gotten around to do it. That's one of those things I feel like coming in and doing it, but if I don't feel like also setting up my camera and getting the lights out, and then I tend not to do it. It's one of the problems I have with associating everything I do in my fish room with shooting videos of it. I not only have to be in the mood to do whatever the project is, but I also have to be in the mood to shoot video of it while I'm doing it. And a lot of times those stars don't all line up and it gets put off. So hopefully now that I can do voiceover type stuff, maybe I'll be able to just set my camera up and let it roll while I go ahead and do my thing. I can put my headphones on, not worry about the video for now, and then later I can go back and discuss what I was doing while I was doing it, and so on and so forth. I did that with my Waterfall tank. I guess I should have mentioned that. Not my Waterfall tank, my native tank. I completely forgot that I took the rim off the front. I cut it here and cut it here and just removed that front section, and I did that. I just let the camera roll, had my headphones on, listening to music while I was working away, and then later I sort of dictated over my video of what I was doing, and I don't know, it didn't work out real well. It was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, but it was a video. It got the point across. You saw how I did it, and so maybe when it comes right down to it, worst case scenario, when we get in here and start pulling that big ass piece of wood out of there and doing all the other work in here, maybe I'll do the same thing. I'll just put the camera up and let it roll, and we'll see where we go from there. So anyway, that's all that's going on in this tank. Some future work, but tonight it's going to get a simple water change and nothing more. Might clean out some of my shrubbery here. You can see some of this is starting to die, so I'll get in there and find out where the dead parts are from and pull that out. So moving on to my 40 breeder. This turned out to be more of a around the world update than I thought, although it does feel weird going backwards. Nothing going on in here again. This is another one of my really stable tanks. It just sits there and ticks over like a clock. It's, probably in need of a water change. The filter on this one's been rattling for a while now, so I probably ought to just buy a new filter. I know you can buy replacement parts for the Suns. I know you can take them apart and get in there and put Vaseline on the spindles and stuff, but I figure after several years' use, when they start making noise or they're not working quite right, for as inexpensive as they are, for the amount of money I would spend buying new pieces and parts and time and effort and all that, it's easier just to buy a new filter from me. So probably not there yet. I don't think it's making that much noise. It's not like it's not working properly or anything. It's just starting to develop a little bit of a rattle. I thought maybe once I did a water change and I, reduced the restriction and the water was able to flow through it more freely, I thought that would stop it from rattling, but it didn't. So it's just, it's getting old. I've been using it for many years now, and, at some point I'm going to have to replace that filter. Otherwise, there's nothing really to talk about that's going on with this tank. Hopefully one of these days I'll be getting out to a pet store at some point. My little sort of accessory fish, all my little neons and little, little schooling fish. I can't even think of what those are. They're not Raspora hets. That's what we're talking about back there. There's little Raspora hets back there. I used to have 6 or 7 of them. Slowly but surely they've died off over the year, and now we're down to just a couple left, and so hopefully we'll get this tank looking a little more active, a few more schooling type fish going on in there. but for the time being, that's just going to have to wait. My 55-gallon tank, the only thing that I have to talk about in this tank is it's finally starting to get taken over by that green cyanobacteria. You see all that bright green growth all over everything in there? You can really see it growing all over everything down here in this corner. It's being scraped away somewhat by my big pleco right there. You can see, if my angelfish gets out of the way, my synodontis catfish back there between the rocks. That's its tail anyway. It's a synodontis lucipinus. And somewhere in here is now my little South American bumblebee catfish. I did see it once or twice since I've put it in here, but otherwise it has vanished as I expected it to. I haven't seen it. And that's about all I can think about that's going on in here. Same old with my diamond tetras. They all just look beautiful. Been seeing some, maybe some spawning activity, not entirely sure. But I've not seen any little babies swimming around. So if it has been spawning activity, it has not been successful yet. I did get one spawn one time. I got 4 little baby diamond tetras out of it. I tried putting them in another tank. I wound up losing a couple of them because they jumped out of the open top tank. And then I put the remaining couple back in this tank. And so hopefully we will get to see them, spawn again. Would love to have more of these diamond tetras. They're one of my favorite fish. My diamond tetra with the bad swim bladder is still alive and kicking. Not necessarily happy. Has to spend all its time doing that just to stay afloat. But it's either that or euthanize it. So I'm going to let it do its thing. Again, I've had fish that have lived like that for a very, very long time. So I'm not going to worry too much about it. Otherwise, not much going on in my 55. So moving once again the wrong direction over here to my gourami tank. Nothing really going on in here either. I could probably get in there and do a little bit of a water change. The front glass needs to be wiped down. All my tanks are very highly lit. I like a nice bright tank. I like nice vigorous plant growth. I like real vibrant colors popping on my fish when, if it's the kind of fish that has vibrant colors. A lot of my fish tend to be a little more drab or dull, but that's okay. So because of the high amount of light, I also get a high amount of growth on the glass, and I get a lot of algae, and that's all just part of the trade-off. If you want a nice brightly lit tank with lots of light, then you better be prepared to deal with a lot of algae in the tank. So I don't mind it. Doesn't bother me at all. That purple covering, the growth you see all over everything is cyanobacteria. It's red cyanobacteria, but it does not look as purple as it comes out on camera. You should see it on my other camera. My other camera makes it come out looking really reddish purple. It's very strange looking. So it's definitely got something to do with the way the camera picks up the light rather than what it actually looks like. Because to me, while there is certainly a reddish tinge to it, or maybe a slightly purplish tinge to it, it's much, much more of sort of a rusty-ish, brownish red color, and it doesn't look unnatural or weird at all. It only looks sort of purple and unnatural and weird when you look at it on camera like this. It really fascinates me whenever I look at it. It looks so different on camera than it does to me. But I talk about that every time we look at this tank, and so I'm not going to keep rambling on about that. Otherwise, not really anything to talk about. My striped raphael has come out a few times. I tried to get a little video of him the other night, but he did not cooperate. As I walked in the room, he saw me coming and went and swam away, so I never was able to get my camera on him. But that's about the most exciting thing that's been going on in this tank that I can think of. So moving on to my 29 miscellaneous here. I actually did just do a water change, filter change, and wiped the glass down. Of course, this tank just has a hang on the back filter, so doing a filter change on this tank is not that big a deal. But I was getting this tank prepped up and looking good because I want to shoot a little bit of video talking about it. I want to talk about old tank syndrome, and I want to use this as an tank as an example of why old tank syndrome is not a foregone conclusion. I've spoken to quite a few people over the years who seem to treat old tank syndrome as though it's just something that is inevitable and will happen after several years. You know, your tank will be fine for a few years and then it's just going to crash and there's nothing you can do about it. And this tank is living proof that that is not true at all. And so I do want to talk about that. We will be shooting a video here in the very near future talking about old tank syndrome, what it is, how to avoid it. It's very easy to avoid. Just do basic maintenance on your aquarium and you won't ever have to worry about old tank syndrome. So I mean, that honestly could be the whole video right there. Just do basic maintenance on your aquarium and you'll never have to worry about old tank syndrome. It's as simple as that. But I will make a 15-minute video out of that, and if you're subscribed you won't miss that or anything else I've got coming up. So this is not my last tank on the list, but it right now is my prettiest, and that angelfish is really just giving us a good show tonight. It's usually a lot more shy when I'm doing my around the world videos like this. Now this is my, well, it's called my brackish tank, although technically I no longer keep it at a brackish salinity. It's just below brackish, and the reason for that is all the years that I kept my figure 8 puffer butterbean here, I kept him in brackish water. It was 1.008 for many years, and eventually I started noticing he was getting these lesions on him. And I don't know what the lesions were. There were these little white marks on his skin. It looked like something was chewing on him or like somebody was carving into him. And he still has them, some, you know, a little bit. You can still see them in there. But eventually I started reducing the salinity in the tank just to see if that would make a difference. In their natural habitat, they live in anywhere from hard water to brackish water. But they also live in marginal systems where the water changes. It comes in, you know, the tide changes the salinity and everything. So I began to think that maybe just living in a constant, steady salinity for years on end might have had something to do with it. And so I started lowering the salinity. And sure enough, the lower I've made the salinity, the better off the fish looks. So now I've got it down to about 1.003. And the fish looks pretty good. My Java fern also does a little bit better. I know that's not looking great at the moment, but that's looking a lot better than it was when it was in a higher salinity. And then this new plant I have here, this is hydrilla, which is an invasive species, but it can grow in just about anything. Really, really soft acidic water all the way up to just about seawater. And so when I read about that, I thought that it might do well here in my brackish tank. So that is actually an invasive species around here that I collected myself out at the Pretty Boy Reservoir. And so far, so good. It looks like it's doing really well. You can even see this bright white stuff here. This is roots that are starting to develop off of it. So I'm definitely getting some new growth in my not quite brackish water. Butterbean, of course, is doing really well. His belly was nice and white when we started the video, and now it is already starting to get a little bit gray. So I think that's got something to do with him feeding. I've always been told that their belly gets gray when they're unhappy or stressed, and as long as they've got a nice white belly, then everything is good to go. But every time I feed Butterbean, his belly gets all dark and gray. It gets really dark during feeding, and I know he's very happy during feeding time. So I'm not sure what that dark belly means. It may simply be darkening due to the real definition of stress, and stress is any kind of change, you know, in your emotion or your mood or whatever. So there is such a thing as good stress or positive stress. You know, winning the lottery is very stressful. I know people don't think about it like that, but it's very stressful. You know, getting that new gig you've been trying to land it's very stressful. So for when Butterbean gets all excited because there's food coming into the tank and I just threw a bunch of snails or shrimp or something in there, that excitement is the same as stress. That's the equivalent physiologically as stress. So perhaps that's why his belly gets all gray when he feeds. It really is just a stress response, but in this particular instance, it's a good stress. Anyway, I don't know, but that's the end of the video. We've come all the way around the world. I'm going to say thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure you subscribe. You don't want to miss anything I got coming up. You never know what's going to be with me. Don't forget, this one here is my brackish tank. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.